Good morning, everyone. How are you doing this morning? Thank you for joining us. This is Emily Soccorsy.
And this is Justin Foster. Good morning, Emily.
Good morning, Justin. How are you?
Good. We're,
Good.
what, 972 miles apart.
That's true. Yes, we are. And yet, through the magic of technology, we're together.
Yes, exactly.
Uh, so for any of you who have joined us who don't know, we are the co-founders of Root and River. And although we may live in separate cities, yeah, we run this company as a branding team. And we love to share our thoughts and ideas on what we call intrinsic branding. And today we thought, as we like to do with most things, that we would start at the very root of branding itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our topic today is the ABC of modern branding. And we're really thrilled that we have you all with us here today. So if you have any kind of questions or concerns as we go along, if there are any issues, please go ahead and type into the chat window or into the questions window. Either one will be monitoring throughout the webinar. And we are recording the webinar as well, and we'll be sharing that recording out with you probably later today. And we also have a hashtag for today's webinar in case you are so moved to share something that either one of us says. And that hashtag is RRBranding. And you can share it on Twitter, take a photo and share on Instagram. We are all about sharing expression. So we're happy to see that happen, and we encourage you to do that if something appeals to you.
Yes.
And also we are on, of course, Twitter and Instagram as at Root and River, and you can share comments and questions there as well. Have I missed any of the setup details, Mr. Foster?
Did you tell them where the restrooms are? Oh, wait, never mind.
I didn't. They're going to have to figure that out on their own, right?
Yes.
So like anything that we do at Root and River, we always begin with intention setting. So I just want to pause for a moment and let's set our intention for the webinar. So Justin, what's your intention for today?
My intention for today is to demystify, to do a great job of helping demystify branding, modern branding and modern marketing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. My intention, I know you're going to ask, so I'll just go ahead and share.
Thanks.
Yeah. My intention for today is to just help create a level set for everyone out there who's joining us about what branding is. It's a word that's thrown around a lot, and it's risen in probably, I would say, popularity or use in the last 3-4 years. And as Justin said, I'd love to demystify it, but also just kind of level set for everybody who can then go forward and do some cool things around brand. And then if you feel like sharing your intention, we always feel like hearing it. So you can put it in the chat window. It's that last window shade on the right-hand side of your screen. And we'd be honored to have that intention. And we can tailor our content to help meet your needs. So we always love to do that as well. Without further ado, I think we'll get started. What do you think?
Let's dive in.
Great. So starting at the very beginning, great photo here. We always start with the premise, which may seem counterintuitive, that nobody cares about your brand. And why don't you unwrap that a little bit for us, Just?
Well, if we want to get really like almost scientific about it, most branding comes from the external mindset. You could call that ego if you want, and it creates this false assumption that people are sitting around waiting to hear from you. They are waiting to buy your product, and all you need to do is just come up with the right marketing formula, And that maybe used to be true. I don't know. But certainly in the last 10 or 15 years, that's just horse crap. It doesn't
Mhm.
work that way anymore because nobody cares. And I think part of the reason nobody cares is because you haven't emitted, most brands have not emitted a signal that attracts someone to pay attention in a deep and meaningful way. That's why when brands um, do something remarkable that makes people pay attention and makes people, feel this great response, um, that it's such a it's like a big happening because it just doesn't happen that often.
Mhm. That's true. Yeah, I think that people, when the concept of brand is introduced, people see it as, oh, this could be like this sexy, interesting thing about my company,
Right.
and they sort of get excited about this idea. But ultimately, unless you know why you care about your brand, nobody else is gonna just magically start caring about it. And nobody cares about your business model.
Yeah.
And so, no one cares how you make money. What they care about is your passion and the way that you express your beliefs and your values through what you're doing.
That's right. And I think one of the biggest shifts that if someone learned branding and marketing terminology or concepts prior to say 2010 or 11, the
Mhm.
biggest thing is to understand is that the audience, you need your audience far more than they need you.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean to chase, the chase something of trying to be something that you're not. It means going inward, to, as you said, to what we call or we practice intrinsic branding, which is to go inward.
Mhm. Yes. And sort of the reason that we practice intrinsic branding and the reason that we're talking about it today is because it is the only solution that we have come up with
Hmm.
to dramatically reduce and eliminate what we have termed drift mode in businesses.
Hmm.
And we see drift mode as the ultimate threat to your business. So, what is drift mode? Well, great example this morning, right? Uber, the CEO of Uber being forced to step down. So, this is an extreme case of brand drift or business drift, where the original foundation of the brand, the business, what it stood for, and maybe the values that were originally there at the beginning were never fully developed in the culture and expressed. And instead of slowing down or taking a pause to do that, to establish the foundation of your brand, the foundational elements, they went into drift mode. Sure, they built a massive company, but the culture and the interior structure, which is reliant upon your brand pillars, was not there. And
Hmm.
so they drifted, brand speaking in brand terms, and now the founder of the company is ousted.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, and I think that happens. I mean, you're right that Uber is a great example of sort of drifting
mhm,
from values. And one of the things about drift is that eventually the market will make you pay attention. So the
mhm,
pressure was so great on Uber to do something that that if when the market is telling you and is pleading with you or making you do something, you're in drift mode. But
mhm,
I think drift mode also comes into play when, for let's say you're a solo brand. Let's go to the opposite end of things.
mhm,
And I think so. If you're a solo brand, let's say you run a small business, just you and maybe a couple of people, whatever it is. Um, Drift mode happens then too, and you would think, well, it's you, you're the owner, you have a lot more control. But here's where it happens. I'd see it happen in two specific areas. One is that you become a servant to your business model at the
mhm,
expense of your brand. That's a big sign of drift, where you're making money, but there's not a lot of joy behind it. And I think the other evidence of drift in a solo practitioner or a small business owner is boredom. It's just not fun anymore to do the work. And being a grown up, 50% of being a grown up, at times is not very fun. But if you're self-employed and you're trying to build this brand, it should be fun. Otherwise, your face is going to look like this guy's, and that's no good.
Definitely. And I think another sign of drift is when you're trying to make decisions regarding tactics, whether it's marketing tactics or hiring tactics, and it never seems to come to you struggle to come to conclusions, and you
Mhm.
struggle to take definitive action, and it seems
Right.
like you're having a circular argument either with yourself as a solopreneur or with your leadership team. You can't
Right.
define a clear direction when it comes to those bigger decisions around your business.
Yeah, and we had in one of our videos that we shot a few months ago, I think it was when we were in the snowstorm in New Jersey,
Hmm.
we talked about PMS, which we believe, tongue in cheek, means pale, male, and stale.
Hmm.
And that's another example because there's something about, and I can say this as being two of those three things. There's something about the mindset of a dude or a man that thinks that the answer is external. That if we
Hmm.
can just find the right message, that's why you hear this language a lot in drifting companies or drifting friends of get. We got to get our story out. We got to get in front of people. We got to get our revenue up. Well, that sort of overly aggressive masculine worldview just makes drift worse. It's one of the great and tragic ironies of marketing when your brand is in drift is that marketing makes it worse. It does not help it
Hmm.
because it just reinforces that sense of staleness or trying too hard. And brands come across as like the loud dad in the Hawaiian shirt at the pool party. Just sort of desperate for attention and but not much there.
Absolutely. All right. So let's move on to something
Yeah.
happier because this guy's face is really starting to depress me. All right. So the ABCs of branding could not begin without some definitions. So we want to talk about our definitions of what brand is.
I
And
do want to point out there's a subtle little message in the definitions. So if you're watching this and you can see what one of what we're trying to get across, you can tweet it or post it.
okay.
Sneaky, sneaky. Continue.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. So for us, a brand is how other people experience what you believe. So I'll say it again. A brand is how other people experience what you believe.
Mhm.
So, we all embody our beliefs every day, and our behaviors provide a brand experience. Um, one of my own beliefs is around beauty. So when I built this, I built an office that I'm sitting in today, talking to you. In our home, it was really important to me that the colors were all correct, that the carpet was a geometrical pattern. I sort of created a picture in my mind before I even began of how I wanted it to look, full of natural light. And so when you come into my office, hopefully, and I think I've had a few visitors tell me that it is this space where there's a lot of beauty and there's a lot of creativity. And so they experience my belief around beauty in a very real way, and that becomes part of my brand,
Mhm.
as an example.
Mhm.
So, branding. What is branding then? The act of branding.
Hey, Em, I think you need to advance the slides. Sorry to point that out, but my
There
there.
we are. Sorry about
Thank you.
that.
No, that's okay. That's why we're a team. Before we move, so before we move on, just the reason that we have Southwest on here as an example is they use this in their marketing, but it rings true to people, and that's if um, without love, it's just a machine.
Hmm.
And I think that that thinking, that idea, and that willingness to express something as controversial as love in business is a is a, you can do that in any organization. You can do that in any type of industry. If you believe in some of the in that concept of love and being different and going against the status quo. Whatever you believe that's deep within you is how people experience, and they can especially believe, not to bring back sad face guy, but they can expect that when you deep down don't believe in yourself, there's the negative aspect is brand is how other people experience what you believe, or you don't believe in yourself, you don't really believe in your products, you don't believe in the direction of the company, et cetera, then that's the same thing applies, the same formula applies.
Mm-hmm. So branding is telling your story to the world in a way that attracts a tribe and repels distractions.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we mean there? So whenever we talk about brands, a lot of business owners or entrepreneurs, they think, oh, it's all about attracting as many people as possible. And we try to teach through our practices that it's really about attraction, but it's also kind of more about repulsion. So repelling people or energy sucks that are going to be distractions, or product lines, or ideas that are going to be distractions for your brand. So when you tell your story, the story of your company, why you formed, who your customers are, why it matters in the world, this should attract a tribe of people who believe what you believe, and then repel those who do not, who are ultimately going to cost you quite a bit more in kind of taking from your brand.
Yeah, and sort of evidence of something that's not a story is this: if no one's moved or provoked.
Mm-hmm.
And story is one of those words that's like a marketing buzzword now that it irritates me, just to be blunt, that it's been diluted from its original intent. A story is something that is an ancient human practice to spread ideas and to build tribes. And so to dilute it by saying, well, this is our story, and you read it and you just want to yawn, or it's a story of how to manipulate the marketplace to get paid or establish market position or whatever it is. The other part of story is that stories are messy. And this is another area of larger brands in particular is they don't want to show the mess. They don't want to talk about mistakes. But you need to talk about the messiness and the mistakes, because it shows that you're human. Whether those mistakes and failures and tests and things or experiments that you made in the marketplace, whether or not they're personal in the sense that maybe some leadership decision you made, or maybe their product, like Amazon's Fire Phone. Amazon's a dominant brand that's phenomenal at telling their story, and they make mistakes. So it's that it's that continuous stream of speaking from your soul to the world in a way that moves people. That's what branding really is.
Absolutely. All right. This is my definition then of marketing, and I translated into a little formula here for y'all. So marketing is clarity of message. It's not that I think people tend to overly inflate marketing, and they make it this big. It can feel oftentimes very big and overwhelming to business owners who don't have a background in it. And today, even those who do have a background in it, it's changed so much, and it's scary, and there's so many options. But it's really not that complicated. It's clarity of message delivered consistently over time. That's it.
I think you also designed I think you also designed your first tattoo here. So that would be awesome.
No, thank you. No, thanks. I'll leave the tattoos to you.
All right. So
all right. So
I want to pause on that one, because this is something. There's some string theory back to this idea of, because we're using that as a formula, is that's something that I think the very first time I heard you speak, you used a variation of that when you spoke at the conference where we met. And I remember hearing it, and as a veteran marketer who doesn't like marketing people, I was like, that's it. That's what marketing is. And and I love things that can be explained in 140 characters. So each of these three areas of branding, and marketing could all be explained in 140 characters, or you could have an entire conference. You could put together a week of how to do clarity of message delivered consistently over time.
For sure.
That's
Yeah,
that's the the
easily.
the power of creating these baseline definitions that
Mm-hmm.
that break the schema that whatever your own whatever is in your mind of what you think it is. That the power of that is that it can be discussed in very compactly or over over more of an educational format.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point here, Justin. It's that, a lot of times in business, and I know as a, director, former, corporate marketing communication director, you're you sort of get trapped in like, well, what does that mean? And these meetings, and when you're in drift mode, like everyone's like, well, what is that branding? What is marketing? And nothing gets done. So I think being bold enough, if you are one of our listeners is in that situation where everyone's sort of using the vagueness of these concepts as further stall tactics to move forward, this is please take these definitions and use them
Mm-hmm.
and just,
Yeah.
step out and say, no, this is what brand is, this is what branding is, and this is what marketing is, and this is how we're going to move forward. It's very powerful, and please, like I said, feel free to use these. I think
Especially
that
if you,
helps.
if,
That
yeah,
helps.
especially if you are a top leader that, or you're, maybe you're the head of marketing for your organization, or you're a marketing-minded or brand-minded senior executive. Is
Mm-hmm.
these definitions that we're giving you are a great way to create, for you to do what we're doing with you, which is to create a new level set so that everyone is working on the same problem and using the same definition. Um, and so it's good for you even if you're in a large organization where you're trying to influence others, these definitions are good for you to use,
Mm-hmm.
and for your own personal brand as a leader.
For sure. Yeah. All right, so let's get to the good stuff here. So we wanted to, we did some research. Our chief of content in specific, Jennifer Lawhead, did some research regarding the most searched questions on branding and marketing. We're very curious about, what people were wondering about, what still remained unclear for them, and now we want to answer them. So that's it. That's the setup slide. Okay. So, Justin, how do you build a brand from scratch? Oh, I might pause here just to say if you have a question, go ahead and type that into the chat feature or the question feature, and we'll get to it. Otherwise, we're going to kind of riff off of these, but feel free to add yours, and we'll jump on it. So, go ahead.
So brand, I think you build a brand from scratch by um, doing first an inner examination, an intrinsic examination of three things, which is what do you believe in? And we define belief as what something you've always known to be true. So what do you believe in? What is your personal and business mission? Why do you exist? And and the third one is a starting point to building a brand from scratch, is how do you take these beliefs and this mission and um, use it to create value or impact in the world? Um, and sometimes we ask the questions, okay, you have all these gifts and skills and differentiators and stuff. What problem do you want to solve in the world? Because
Mm-hmm.
you can build a great brand by solving problems in the world. And so but without those three ingredients, things tend to go a little flat. It's like those are almost like to use the scratch definition or the scratch imagery here, it's almost as if the dough is missing something if it doesn't have those three things.
Mm-hmm.
What say you, Emily?
Absolutely. I mean, we often use this analogy that your brand and your message and all these foundational elements, your mission, your message, are the sourdough starter of your brand.
Mm-hmm.
And it just won't rise to carry that analogy a little bit further without those things. And it's not complicated ingredients. It's yeast, it's flour, it's water, and a certain degree of well, elbow grease as well as you need.
Yeah.
You can tell I'm a baker. So anyway, it really it won't take on a life of its own unless it's rooted or it contains those key ingredients.
Yeah, we often notice this too in building a brand that a lot of times it's built with things of low nutritional value,
Hmm.
where air is injected into the brand to try to make it bigger than it is. And in fact, in FTC language, puffery is an allowed advertising tactic. It's the extra air in the bag of chips. It's the extra air in a loaf of bread. It's those things. And the problem is that the consumer, whoever that may be, once they start to consume your brand, they're gonna they're gonna find this out, and now they have the power to talk about it. So it just makes a lot more sense to go back to the core ingredients, the tried and true ingredients that we just said, and build it from there, and then do a really, really good job of marketing that organic brand that you've created.
Hmm. Absolutely. And actually, I'm totally geeking out on this analogy because once you bake the bread, that smell, I mean, is there anything better than the smell of fresh baked bread?
Bacon.
Well, I think bread is the winner there, but that's pretty close. But that scent, the aroma of your brand, so to speak, will draw people in, and it doesn't have to be that you're so intentional about it. Once it's already out there, that will continue to spread.
Mm-hmm.
Okie dokie. So, second question. How do you develop a brand strategy? Many
You need
people
a
ask me
really
this
big
question.
map and a bamboo stick or
Yeah, a
cane.
pointer. Everybody's
A
got a.
pointer. Everyone needs a pointer.
And great hats.
And a clipboard. I think the guy to the general's left is holding a clipboard or a file folder.
And cigarettes, apparently.
Hey, it's developing a brand strategy is stressful. Um, so why don't you start with that one? How do you develop a brand strategy?
Well, again, we're going to be probably a little repetitive in some of these questions. It does start with that foundational element of knowing why you exist in the world, what you offer, and how you offer it very succinctly. From there, you can begin then to look at your market, your audience, and listen. That's always what we recommend first, is to really get embedded with them and understand what their needs are, and then do a crosswalk between that and what your brand stands for. And I think when you do that, a roadmap begins to emerge of your brand strategy. You also want to look at the stories that you already inherently have and how you can tell those stories on platforms where your audience enjoys consuming them.
Mm-hmm. I would
What
add, yeah,
about
that's
you?
great. I would add a couple of things, or maybe just a slightly different tweak to that is
Mhm.
I think if we look at it in a linear way, even though branding is spherical, but developing a strategy is a bit more linear, is the first is you need to do a real benchmark of where you're at, of what resources you bring to the table.
Mhm.
Um, and it has to be honest. If you've got a crappy website, you need to put that on the list of things that you need to work on. If you've got and you want to look for hidden or unexpected resources, like people often overlook the size of their network or the geographic placement of their network. That's that level set, that audit, that's checking the cupboards and the kitchen cupboards for what's in them.
Mhm.
I think the second thing is you need to gauge the tolerance level of existing leaders, employees, clients to go do something radically different. Most people say they want change. They say they want change, but they really don't. And most people say they do. I want something interesting, but they really don't.
Mhm.
So you need to test the appetite for change in the company in order to develop an effective strategy. Otherwise, your strategy quickly devolves or dilutes into a punch list of how you're going to spend money.
Yeah.
Um,
And
the
that's never
third thing,
attractive to the leader.
right? Exactly. It's not good for your brand as either. And the third thing is you need some KPIs or key performance indicators um, along the way, but be creative with them. A key performance indicator of a brand strategy could be the response rate when you send out a survey. like a perception survey. That's a key piece of data. It could be it could be a number of shares that you get of your existing content. That's a KPI. It's not ROI because a lot of branding doesn't follow the rules of ROI. It's more evidence of growth or evidence of performance. If you have those three components, then you have this framework for a strategy that you can then infuse with some of these other things that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. The only thing that I would add to that, Justin, is that you mentioned gauging the appetite for change. I think that's good, but also I don't want people to misunderstand that branding or refreshing a brand or reintroducing a brand always has to include like a vast amount of change. That's not always the case. Sometimes it's just small tweaks or returning to those original values. So I think rebranding that word has kind of put that idea in people's head that it's going to be this drastic redo starting from scratch. We've got to change all our collateral. We've got to do that. Not always the case. So just wanted to kind of add that in there.
Yeah, a good point.
All right. So next question. Anyone know who this is? Just kidding. So what is a personal brand? Many people are asking.
Well, a personal brand has the same definition as a business brand or org brand. It's how other people experience what you believe.
Right.
It's a matter of presence and reputation, but it's presence and reputation grown or garnered through the intrinsic work of knowing yourself, knowing your value, knowing your gifts, and then articulating those to the world in a meaningful way. And celebrities, we use Oprah here, we could use many celebrities, they're really good at with their personal brand. If certainly they come into it with some equity. But if you go back and you trace LeBron James, Oprah Winfrey, Elon Musk, Bono, these contemporary personal brands, you can go way back to their origins where they started thinking about the impact they wanted to make in the world with their brand back when they were broke and nobody knew who they were. And it's so a personal brand is not something that just happens because you get famous at something within the company, your community, an industry, whatever. It happens through intentionality and from at the deepest part of you.
Right. I think the growth and the prominence of a personal brand happens that way. But I think it's important to note that we all have inherent personal brands. It's basically, as you mentioned, our presence. And whether you choose to cultivate that or you choose to take that out to a larger audience, of course, that's up to you. And some business leaders that we work with, they're not, at first when we begin talking about it, that this is a really confusing concept. What's my personal brand with my business brand? And we've just been so taught to be very linear about this and that there's this very clear line in the sand. And that's not really the case anymore. In most cases, your business is an extension of your personal brand. They really go hand in hand, and it is much more spherical and connected than any kind of linear construct.
Yeah, and if we loop it back to unease or back to drift, your personal brand might be in drift mode when your value is frequently misunderstood by others.
Great point.
So if you're not closing the deals that you think you should get, if you're not getting that promotion you should think, if you're not making that change inside of your organization that you think it's because somehow you've become detached from a part of you. That's why we always provoke people to go inward. Whenever there's an outward problem, go inward, because very often it's just your perspective. And there's also often with personal branding a sense that you have to be, there's a lot of, we jokingly say that humility is a terrible brand strategy. And what we mean by that is that assuming that you don't have something to say, assuming that being behind the scenes and quiet is eventually they're going to discover who you are, it doesn't work that way. It's being your authentic self consistently. Again, using, Emily, your definition of marketing, that marketing happens in the day-to-day conversations and leadership moments, especially the unplanned leadership moments you have as an individual.
And just to flip that example around that you had, if if you're not closing the deals, it may be the personal brand is off from the business brand. Vice versa is true too. If you feel like your personal brand is on point and you're a person of integrity, or you have integrity for what you believe, but you're not able to close the deals, or a competitor that is better branded comes up from behind, that's a great example to take to the leader, or if you are the leader, that should be a sign to you that you may have strayed into drift mode and that it's time to readdress the brand.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so how do you create a brand's image?
Go for it.
So the visual part of the brand is typically what people think of, I think, very often when they hear the word brand. And although a lot of people like to start with that aspect because, they are very visual, I think we're all very visual as humans. The right place to start is at the brand level, and the beliefs level, and the sorry, my dog just decided to chime in.
That's awesome.
Um, so you need to begin with what your core values are, and you need to begin with what the overall brand strategy is, all those questions around what your stories are, who you're trying to reach. All of that foundation needs to be laid before you begin creating visual representations of that brand.
Mm-hmm. And Subaru is a great example of this. I think Subaru, probably pronounced differently, but it means unite in Japanese. And their logo comes from a cluster of 6 stars in the Taurus constellation. They were often referred to throughout history as Atlas's daughters. And if we trace the roots of Subaru back, it was that they were building a brand that was bigger than selling cars. And they did it. They created this image now which is reinforced through marketing, especially with the way we define marketing. And they created this image, but that they're different, they're unique, and you feel Subaru owners. I've owned, I think, 3 of them. You feel different than the rest, like you connected to some almost like interstellar idea of going and doing something different in the world, and that is reinforced in Subaru's image over and over and over again. Everything from the way the showroom is laid out, to the way that they get feedback from customers, to the way they train their technicians in the dealerships. All of that is around creating this image of authentic uniqueness, which is really, really hard to do for a big company.
Right. I mean, you mentioned it there as you talked through the different aspects, how Subaru expresses the brand. So it's important to note here that when you have your visual branding down, it needs to be on everything, everywhere, all the time. And it's good to have some variation in that. Having a professional designer give you different looks, create a color palette that different colors can be used in different platforms. Something that we do. Check out our branding. It's right on point because it has to be as a visual person myself, and it's done by Pace Creative, and they're amazing. So just shout out to Jen Pace Duran. She's incredible. But that consistency of the visual aspects, that's how you create the brand image over time.
Mm-hmm.
So Justin, what is market position?
Well, not coincidentally, it's a filing system in the mind and hearts of the customer. Mm-hmm. And so consider this. And some of this is old school stuff, and that's kind of why I love it. I mean, positioning was the term positioning was created by Jack Reese and Al Trout and Jack Reese. I think I got their names right. Way back in the early 70s, and it's been reinforced over time. But ultimately what it is that it's an understanding that the audience has a filing system in their brain, and you either need to create a new file folder, a new drawer, or you need to replace something that's already in there. And both of those are viable strategies. To go create a new one takes tremendous courage, because you do not create a new folder, a new market position by being slightly better. You create market position, a new market position, a new file folder by being radically different over time. Not radically different in a press conference, not radically different with a campaign, but radically different as a product and as a product offering and as a brand. The other part of market position would then be if you decide that it's best for your brand that you want to replace someone's file folder with yours, you have to have a very clear understanding of what truly makes you different. And here's kind of the secret behind all this. The only thing that makes you different is your mission and your beliefs. Maybe a little bit of IP on the back end, but your mission and beliefs are what make you different. So if you decide to do that route of market position by replacing someone's file folder, you need to go be you as frequently and as amplified as possible in order to create separation from your competitors that hold that current space in the file folder.
Right. And this is something that's why I like using market position here instead of brand position, because it goes to the definition. You're going to have to be very clear and consistent over time to really replace that file and make that change occur. It's not going to happen overnight. So that's where the clarity comes in. If it is delivered in a messy way, eventually the position will erode and dilute.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yep.
So finally, this is the last question. So if you have your question ready to go, or we haven't answered your question, go ahead and pop that into the questions feed. So how can a brand be successful? One of our favorite brands here is Tony Robbins. Just because he's so powerful. I mean, he's really achieved a lot of success, and in the last few years, he seems to have changed a lot of what he's doing from financial success into personal and intrinsic success, which is music to our ears, so to speak. So how can a brand be successful? Justin, you talked a little bit earlier about ROI, which we kind of were like, on ROI, but KPIs of what makes a brand successful in your mind, what are those?
Well, I think it's level of engagement with the people that touch the brands, and there's 50 different ways to measure that, but you have to know, basically it's this: do my employees love me, or do my employees love our brand, and do our customers love our brand? And you got to find a way to measure that, because if your customers don't love you and your employees don't love you, you do not have a successful brand. You have you have an entity that people are tolerating. The second thing to measure related to the success of a brand from a KPI standpoint is growth or reach. Not how many people's eyeballs you got in front of, but how many people responded back to you. They opted into an email list, they applied for a job, they submitted a complaint about your business that would help improve it. It's not the outbound that's successful. That's easy to do. The hard part is to do marketing, is to create a KPI where they respond, and you can use that data. And I think the third KPI is much, much more intrinsic. And that is, every day when you get up and you go to your company, whether it's yours or you're a part of a company, and it fills you with pride and purpose, then you're a successful brand, even if you're small.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a sandwich shop in I think it's in Michigan that has built this dominant local brand, and they've never expanded, other than they made their building bigger, and they're very, very picky about the way they do things, and they're on their third generation of ownership within the family. And it was all about the fact that they wanted to build something that whoever came to work there felt proud and purposeful of being there. And you can't top that, really.
No, you can't. I was going to say, I think one question that you could switch out was how proud are you of your brand?
Yeah.
And I think the more confidence and pride that you have in your brand, the more you can master the conversation around your brand, which then leads to more deals, more attracting the right sort of people to your brand, and that has financial benefits, of course. But I think rooting in pride is really important,
Mhm.
um, and reaching people, as you mentioned.
Yeah. So we did get a question come through. I'll
Mhm.
throw it out to you to
Cool.
answer him and then respond. Is it ever too late to brand my business?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's ever too late. You know, a lot of times startups kind of get into that mode and they're growing and they're building and they're not thinking about the brand. And we've worked at with a variety of startups and a variety of very well established companies that haven't had a formalized or maybe a 21st century brand. And we meet them where they're at and take them on a journey. So it's never too late, whether you've just begun or you've been in business 30, 40 years. It's never too late to build your brand. Um, I think it's a willingness. I will say this: it's a willingness to learn, to be open, and to reinvent yourself in a way, or take a deep dive. You know, we like to say that branding is really it begins with a spiritual journey, and people who work with Root and River need to be ready to go on that interior journey to practice intrinsic branding first. So it will require that of you,
Yeah.
and it's something
Uh,
you should be ready for.
yeah, I would add just this little extra thing is a little jelly on the bread is that it, it is too late to use the things that don't work for you anymore. Let the dead things be dead things. Old ways of doing things, if they don't work, don't try to resuscitate them. I mean, that's what zombies are. They're resuscitated things that used to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get so prideful that, well, we're going to make this work, that you can't just let things that are supposed to die die,
A good
because
point. Mhm.
in that, just like in nature, when there's a fire or a flood or a hurricane or whatever, it comes back, and it comes back stronger. Nature comes back stronger and more vibrant and more abundant if you're willing to set aside the things that no longer serve you.
Mhm. Excellent. All right. So, okay, Emily, Justin, I get it. What do I do next? So we've got three tips for you here because we like to give you tips.
Okay.
So the first thing that you can do if all of this is really driving and you're feeling like, oh, I'm gonna take these definitions, I'm gonna use them and I want to move forward in my brand or in the company that I work for as brand. The first thing to do would be to conduct an internal campaign to find the believer. So if you're within an organization, begin to talk in this manner, begin to share those definitions, begin to ask their feelings about the brand, ask for customer feedback on the brand to find the goal here is to find people who are as intrigued by this little wrinkle as you are, because you're going to need a little internal juju, a little momentum to get this branding thing off the ground. Now, if you're on your own, you're still going to need some believers, and you can find that through mastermind groups, through trusted advisors, friends, and your influencers, your sphere of influence, former clients. Find people who are willing to have the conversation around what the brand means to them, how they've experienced it in the past, and recruit them toward this campaign.
even if even and they may not be believers yet in the idea that there needs to be a rebrand or reintroduction or refresher of the brand, but you're looking for believers in the essence or the doctrine or the of a brand, and they're going to come from surprising places. We find believers in an organization's ethos and in their purpose and mission. We find them in engineering and HR and IT. Ironically and sadly, we rarely find believers in the marketing department.
Yeah.
We that's we and it's because I think it's a sense of most marketing is boring and sad, and that's not a very fun job to be in when you're trying to brand a company or market a company that's in drift mode. But there are believers in the organization. They just are going to come from unexpected places.
Okay, second thing to do is look at the data.
Yeah, I mean, if the first thing to look for is this, just like the image here of this, this drought, and I love this phrase that food grows where water flows. And that idea from a data standpoint, data is flow. And And the best data to look for is whether or not you're being engaged with, like we said earlier. That data then informs not that you need to go chase something different. Oh, we got to tweak our message, and oh, we got to come up with this campaign that attracts millennials. No, the data is for you to go back inward to re-examine if you're still speaking. Are you truly speaking truth? Do you truly, really, really want to be different in the marketplace? Because if you don't, it shows up in the data every single time.
Yeah. Another thing is to think about is that, a lot of our clients do get stuck just trying to get something out there that's absolutely spot on perfect from the get-go. And although we get them really close to that, we're human. It's never going to be 100% totally, absolutely perfect from the get-go and attract a million people. You have to have that loose mindset where you're like, okay, let's get the most excellent thing we can out there. Let's let it live and breathe in the world, and then let's look at the data and understand what it's telling us about our message. And then let's go inward, let's tweak outward. So, don't let that fixation on perfection or the idea that it's all going to be very permanent block you. Those aren't really true. Things can be changed so easily now, and the data is there for us to learn from and grow from.
Mm-hmm.
Last one, another one of our favorites.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
To trust your gut. The only real valuable thing you have is intuition. So, as Justin alluded to, take that inward journey or stay rooted in your own gut. I just read this study that more than half of the top CEOs in the world make decisions based on gut. And they think that's underreported because there's a stigma to admitting to that. But I thought that was super interesting. Your gut, your inner teacher knows a lot. I mean, the way that the mind works, the way that we process information, it's all inside of us. So trust your gut and ask, yourself, if you get into a place where you feel like you're going into drift mode, what problem is your brand trying to solve in the world? What big problem is your brand trying to solve in the world? And then reflect deeply, engage your gut, your intuition to understand what that answer may be.
And I think you can take that same question and tweak it as an intrinsic question, which is what problem does your gut tell you is going on with the brand?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to have a ton of answers behind it related to, well, it's I know we're stale and I don't know what to do about it. We're not retaining talent. Our customer a pipeline is shrinking. Whatever it may be, you got to get to the root of the problem that you're trying to solve, because if you're not the owner of the company and you want to go pitch this, that we need to do a rebrand, you can't just say, well, it just feels right in my gut. But what your gut will lead you to is it'll lead you back to the one that we said before. It'll lead you back to data. And here's something interesting about the ego. The ego loves to solve problems. So if you can frame what you're trying to do in the world extrinsically with your brand and internally what problem you're trying to solve with your brand inside of your organization, then that gets the attention of people that you need on your side in order to make this change.
So we had another question come in, and just asking for some books. 3 books that we would recommend to read about branding. I would say one. I mean, the first book that I read that was really, sets the foundation is Simon Sinek's Start With Why. It's just a good foundation level set on the way humans react to beliefs and the way tribes are formed. Mm-hmm. And I also like Leaders Eat Last, also by Sinek. Mm-hmm. Those are 2 for me.
Yeah, I would say the best branding book I ever read is called Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath. They did not write it as a branding book. It's a book about how ideas spread. Well, brands are ideas. Mm-hmm. And it's thought-provoking, it's interesting, it's got great ideas behind it. And then another book that is not a branding book directly also, but that it speaks to everything that we're talking about, is a book that you encouraged me to read a couple years ago, Em, which is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. This personal journey, the story of this personal journey, is the same journey that every leader of an organization needs to go on. That's when we talk about an intrinsic branding and an internal journey. The Alchemist is exactly what we're talking about, the process that the main character in the story went through to discover their reason for their existence on this planet.
Yeah, it's a great one. Alrighty. Well, that sort of, let's see if we have any more questions that came up or comments. Otherwise,
there's one here, and we've had this one before, but how do I convince my boss we need to refresh our brand?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you've had to do that, Em, so why don't you answer that one?
Thanks. I think it begins with laying the foundation of those definitions and asking some difficult questions and just speaking truth ultimately. I mean, all you can do is speak the truth of what you're seeing, what you're hearing. Once you've created that little tribe that we talked about and the internal advocates for the brand, and you have your own data. I use data in the terms of, you know, what people are saying about the brand, how they're making it feel, how it's making them feel or not feel. You got to take that to the leader and have a moment of courage and say, hey, this needs to be addressed. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm hearing. Have harder data ready too. Have some examples of other brands that are kicking your butt, and you know, just be honest and direct. Most leaders are on the DISC scale of human behavior. That they tend to be high Ds. That means dominant. They're very dominant. They like very direct talk. They like to have you know, data to back up what you're saying. And I would take, you know, if you're not that way naturally, it's okay. Just be that way in the meeting, and leave them with something to chew on. Give them a glimpse also of what the brand could be if you really gave it what it deserved. And in a lot of cases, these may be legacy leaders who are looking at the last part of their career. And I would also suggest, you know, appealing to the legacy, not as a manipulation, but as a fact. Unless this brand gets out of drift mode, we may lose our legacy. You may lose your legacy. And that's something that's very real. And they're already thinking it anyway, so it's not going to be new. But it will resonate with them at a deep level.
Yeah, and to just piggyback off of that, don't be timid. It's not a suggestion. It's not, hey, maybe we should go to the moon. No, it's we are going to the moon. It's declarative. It's something that you'll spend maybe all of your political capital on, but you'll do it because you know it's the right thing to do. If you start to hedge your bets, that's just going to show up as weakness, and it will erode your credibility that you actually see that there's a problem to solve. So if you really see drift in your organization, if you really see that the PMS in the organization, you need to, as them said, you need to speak truth, but you need to do it boldly and declaratively, not timidly and passively, and hoping that, you know, they'll still like you after you speak all this truth to them. Truth always offends, and you're going to offend somebody, and you might as well do it with some conviction and some brevity in the process.
Absolutely. Be bold, my friends.
Be bold, yes.
All right. Well, we want to thank you all for joining us. I don't see any other questions that have come in, and we got 1 minute here. So if you'd like to subscribe to our newsletter, if you haven't already, you can do that at rootinriver.com. And as we mentioned earlier, follow us on social. And we have at Root and River, but our own personal handles are listed there, Emily at Large. And Justin Foster is Foster Thinking, at Foster Thinking.
Awesome.
So awesome. Fun. Thank you all. And we will be sending out this recording to you later today. And we hope you share it as well.
Exactly. And also we will be having another webinar in July, yet to be determined date and time. But if you have suggestions of what you would like us to talk about, you can drop us a note off of on our website, or you can just email humans@rootandriver.com. And that'll get to both of us, and you can just let us know what you'd like to hear more of in the future, or what you think your audience, your network would like to hear as well. We'd love to hear that from you.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.